Welcome, very, very much to Conversations. A pleasure to welcome to the program a gentleman I met at the Left Forum recently. It was just held across the street at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, just a week or so ago. And his name is Harry Cason. Cason, is it?
Cason.
Is it like Cason?
Cason.
Not Cason.
As we go rolling along.
As those Casons go rolling along.
That's right.
Yeah, I know this. Anyway, he's an adjunct professor of political science at CUNY, and he's also a supporter of, I'm not sure, member of, recognizing the significance of what's generally called the Zeitgeist movement.
That's right.
And I congratulate very much. We sat in on your conference with Bakari and so forth, and it was really enlightening. I think they got something really serious going, and I thank you for giving counsel to them and to being part of that. But welcome so very, very much, Harry.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it'll be a pleasure to express some of the views and particularly get the public even more informed about what is possible if we only think about it and organize ourselves
and seize the moment.
Well, we certainly need to.
Okay, young man.
Because we don't have a lot of moments.
I know the moments have dwindled down to a precious few. One of the popular songs say. But share with us your own background. Born and raised, a little of the education.
Well, I grew up in the South, in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I came from a very conservative background, very conservative parents. My father was a minister.
Okay. Baptist?
A Baptist, yeah.
A lot of Baptists.
Yeah, a lot of Baptists. But one thing I did benefit from was the moral training and the concept of right and wrong, and so I did benefit from that. I didn't benefit a whole lot from the rest of it, but I did benefit, and it really helped.
South Carolina is really part of the Deep South, isn't it?
It historically has been one of the most conservative states in the Union. It still is one of the most. It used to be the most.
Really,
but and I think Texas is taking it over these days.
Yeah, maybe,
But I've been here in New York for quite a while now, over 30 years. And
me too.
Yeah.
I feel like a New Yorker now, although I have my background's in Detroit, Michigan. But
yeah, it's amazing what's happened to Detroit. It's absolutely outrageous. And, unbelievable that our country would even allow what's happened to Detroit and other cities, Camden, New Jersey, and so forth. It's an incredible situation that our country would allow the situations as they've developed to develop as they have. It's just I'm shocked by. Excuse me.
There's some water if you want. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What I find incredible is that New York has to compete with New Jersey, and New Jersey has to compete with Delaware, and Delaware has to compete with, and to do what? In order to have work for people? I mean, this is incredible. Why do we have to compete with each other? I mean, especially within our own country. You would think that we could do a lot better than that.
There are some who would argue, economic theorizing, that will create efficiencies.
That's what they'll argue. Yes, of course. And in fact, there's a recent study. I have the website and I can give you. We could put it on online or something. But a recent IMF study has indicated that that this competition and the inequality that results from this competition, competitive world that we've developed, actually does not create greater wealth for the community. That's an IMF study, and I'm bad about remembering names and so forth, but I do have their names, and I have the website, and
Did you get some higher education down in South Carolina?
Well,
I see you're an adjunct professor of political science.
I got undergraduate work in the University of South Carolina, and in those days, they wanted people to go to college, and
and it was easier to do.
Yes, yes.
You didn't have to come out with a huge burden of debt like now. It's unconscionable.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they wanted people to get an education. There was this fear about the Soviet Union overtaking the United States, and so it was inexpensive. It wasn't near as difficult to get through, and so this is a different time that we're in now. The competition the kind of competitive world that we've created, it really ramps up more and more every year. I mean, how else could because the winners win, and when they've won, other people come along and say, well, now I've got to jump over this hoop and this hoop and this hoop in order to have a decent life. And so competition only gets more and more fierce. I think that's one of the most dangerous and most telling stories about why we're in the situation we're in today.
We're talking, we do want to put it within a national context and also within an international context, because there's lots of things going on technologically that have it, like it's so much globalization, outsourcing to other nations, and that probably was not able to be realized even within their planning programs and everything until they had the ability to have mass containerization and set up these supply chains that can reach out and give the advantage in terms of labor costs and that kind of thing. That was those are developments that have come from the days of on the waterfront, where you had shoremen having to take each bag and that sort of thing. The efficiencies that could be realized by the people who run the big corporations.
Well, I think overall and in the long run, it's not particularly efficient.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's efficient for some. It might be efficient for the bosses to run to China and get or Indonesia or Bangladesh or wherever and get things done there.
Called a race to the bottom.
Right. Exactly. So it might be beneficial for them and efficient for them for the ones who are running the show there, but it's not carrying things from one side of the globe to the other is not particularly efficient, really. And I think Zeitgeist, which is an organization that I do identify with, we really would like to see as much production as we can possibly do on a more local level, local basis.
That's interesting.
Doesn't mean we don't have to. We can't trade internationally.
Economies of scale.
But we should produce locally and reduce the need to send things from one end of the globe to the other. Now, there's a lot more to be said about that.
I wonder if we could back up a little bit back to your earlier life. And you, I mean, you were there. You took a bachelor's degree, I guess. Were you in political science then?
No, I wasn't.
More generally, liberal arts, or
I guess I don't want to tell all my secrets, but as I said earlier, they really wanted people to get a college education, and I probably was not the best student even at the University of South Carolina, and so it wasn't as demanding, so I got my undergraduate degree in business administration.
Oh, you were thinking of going that way, or?
Well, I did go in that direction. And of course, I pursued business administration because I'm just, at the time in my life, I wasn't well-read, well-informed. As I said, my family was very much involved with religion, but when it came to the real world and how it all worked, we just didn't have a whole lot of books in our house and a whole lot of pre-education
the family
in my background.
I see. The family setting is really important, isn't it? Whether it's warm and welcoming, humor, encouraging what they call autodidact learning and so forth.
Oh, exactly.
I was in a similar thing. I had a middle class family, but it was warm and well. And we had everybody almost had the Encyclopedia Britannica. And we had the Harvard Classics, and we were encouraged to read and think widely and everything.
I remember we were going to get the encyclopedia, and we didn't, and I was so disappointed that we didn't. But it was always a matter of money, lower middle class. My parents were really wonderful human beings, but they just weren't as educated as they could have been, so I just didn't come from a solid middle class or upper middle class background, and that really hurt me. And it's also part of what's driven me today.
Okay,
recognizing that that not having certain things that other people have really can set you back. So this is, I question the nature of our democratic society when we don't have equal opportunity. And I, being a white male, I had a lot more opportunities than other people did.
Absolutely,
that was in my
much less on the world scale.
On the world scale, and even in my hometown. I had I had many advantages that others didn't have, and I had many disadvantages that others also
what would be some of the disadvantages, do you think? Hard to develop a sense of empathy for the least advantaged, which most of your moral codes from Jesus on have said, take care of the least among us and so forth, but it's roundly ignored seemingly by the political leaders over time.
It's largely ignored by many of the Christian leaders as well, the political and Christian leaders. But any time you don't have the opportunity to travel as others do, you don't have, and I would say, in defense of public education, I have to say that the public education was decent. It was good. And if it hadn't been for that, I would certainly not be where I am today. I would be digging ditches somewhere, no doubt. But
did you go on and take a master's or somewhere or not?
I went. Yes, I have got a master's in political science.
You went into political.
So that's when I came to New York.
Did you flirt with trying to do an entrepreneurial start a business or something? You were doing business administration and.
I came to New York and tried to get a little business going, and it's tough.
It's tough.
And that didn't pan out. So. But I had actually I came here really to continue my education, to pursue I think what I thought would be a better education, a more rounded education in New York City as opposed to South Carolina.
Right, I can see where you might think that. This is a very cosmopolitan place. I love New York.
And you meet a lot of different people, and you also hear ideas that you don't hear.
I saw a thing. Can I share, Harry? I think there's 250 nations in the world. I think are recognized. I'm not sure at the UN, And I saw a piece in the paper that in New York City, that there are sizable communities of 189 of the 250 nations that exist. Everybody almost in the world is here. I like that, don't you?
It's terrific.
Rather than everyone being of the same stamp.
It's absolutely terrific. Just being exposed to lots of other people.
They're different.
They're different. But you also recognize the commonality as well.
Yes.
And you learn. I'll say this: that I came to New York on my high school trip, and I saw African American people walking around, talking and just being themselves, and educated people, and I did not experience that.
That had not been the case in the South. No,
that's not what I experienced.
Jim Crow and whatnot. It was just horrible.
I have to say that I learned on that trip that African American people are people like everybody else.
Isn't that something to have to learn?
Terrible
burden.
Well, when I grew up, the doctor's office. When you go to the doctor's office, we went into to the front door, and African Americans went into another side door, and there was a door between the two, and I accidentally opened the door one day and I saw all these African American people in this other room.
Did you go right in? Did you go right in and start laughing?
I didn't because I was, you know, I felt a little fear, felt out of place.
Yeah, it's hard to do something toward the way history is saying we have to go. It's hard very often to move with the tide that history is telling us we have to do, and it holds today.
And
we need change.
Incredible! We need incredible change as the Zeitgeist movement would suggest.
We'll get to that. Believe me, I'm all for the Zeitgeist movement. I think it's a major thing.
So I did learn a lot, and by coming to New York on my high school trip, and then we came back a time or two, and on another trip, myself and some friends, and so I just learned that there's so many people on this planet. They're different from me.
Hallelujah.
But they're not all that different. You know. They're
at a certain core level. Yeah, right. We're all one family. Yeah. Mm.
You know, their concerns are very similar.
Yeah.
Their needs are very similar. Mm-hmm. New York. New York is really not appreciated by a lot of the country, but it's for that, and it's for the same reason, because there's so many different people here.
I think people can be very comfortably ensconced in a sense of how they get their sense of identity, and they're comfortably ensconced in it, and they don't want anyone to rock the boat with some sort of change that they're asked to experience.
Absolutely.
I think it's one of the major problems confronting humanity.
Oh, yeah. Michio Kaku refers to
great guy.
Going from a zero society to a first level society.
Thank you, Mr. Sagan.
And
Carl Sagan. Yeah.
So, what he means by zero society is a society where we're all in our little tribes, and a first level society is where we actually recognize the universality of the planet and the people on it, and that we're not in tribes anymore. We're actually recognizing the planetary unity that we have among us all.
Yeah.
Michio was speculating the other day that maybe there are lots of societies out there that we don't know about, but they may not exist anymore because they just couldn't make it from that zero level to that first level.
Could I share something with you?
Absolutely.
I have a friend. I don't want to get into depth in it, but I'm interested. I did doctoral work in geography, and I'm interested in everything. I'm very interested in the relationship between the disciplines rather than the details of the individual disciplines, which I think is becoming so incredibly specialized that it almost makes it very difficult for people to think systems or think about the whole system, which in fact is the reality. I mean, everything is interconnected. But among other things is the language thing. I got a friend of mine who has the means for trying to incorporate use the color spectrum in all of its great dimensions, 2 billion shades of yellow, 3 billion shades of yellow-green, and as an algorithmic thing to be able to translate the languages of the world into one another algorithmically and in real time, so that you speak and it comes out to the person who's listening to your English in Swahili or and it made me think, how many languages are there in the world? Not dialects, but languages among all the people. So I looked it up, and I wasn't sure, you know.
Yeah, I'm not exactly.
You want to take a rough guess? How many languages recognized by linguists do you think there are on the planet on planet Earth now?
I would 3,000.
Well, that's a better guess than a lot. A lot of people say here. Actually, what they come down to is about 6,700, between 6,700 and 6,900 distinct languages.
Wow.
And we're losing a lot of those Aboriginal languages because they're just being gobbled up by the big three. 65% of the world population can be contained within just the top 11, English, Mandarin, and so forth. But wouldn't it be marvelous if we could have a means of communicating to where it's just like we're speaking in two different languages, but we're right at the moment. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's a big thing that could bring the world together, like perhaps it would. And we're getting the technological. We're getting close to the technologically augmented capability to achieve such a breakthrough, as well as a lot of other breakthroughs that are going on that could be seen positively. Which might be a good lead in trying to get over to the Zeitgeist. And
exactly. I was going to say, I mean, that's the idea behind, one of the ideas behind the Zeitgeist is how technology makes it possible for us to advance beyond our tribal settings.
Or our whole historically inherited series of institutions and means by which people have gotten a sense of identity relative to where we're going, the future, rather than reified or reestablished outdated institutions out of a past that we have the ability to positively move beyond.
Move forward and evolve and absolutely, and not just concretize the past. And,
or reify. Isaac Asimov, we did a program with, he said this is the defining generation in evolutionary terms, not just political terms. Evolutionary terms, that we're coming to the end of a process we all got started 200,000 years ago in Africa. We're all Africans, and we're coming to the end of that. And so on one side, we got a capability of liberating the entire Homo sapiens, the ability, the capability. We should make a distinction between the capability and the inherited, reified or reestablished institutions that are all around us. And so we have the ability to liberate.
We absolutely do. We absolutely
the whole of the Homo sapien experience.
We absolutely
and
do.
the ecology.
Absolutely.
In a way that we simply haven't had historically. At the same time, we have the ability to go along with the reified institutions based upon scarcity that has been characteristic of the whole of human society and been the cause of war largely between the various nations whose weapon systems have become species lethal within our lifetime. Maybe there's something to it, that this is the defining moment in a new way other than just political. If you understand or make sense.
No, absolutely.
And the Zeitgeist seems to be typing into that way of thinking that was also pioneered by Fuller and some of the other leaders of comprehensive systems thinking coming out of the intellectual past.
Well, there is the momentum of science and technology itself, and I think that's what you're referring to, and the opportunities that momentum, the newness, the creativity that comes along with these technologies. We have a global telephone, so to speak, now with the internet.
Oh, it's a miracle,
right? So we can communicate even that way.
Harry, just think if you were back there in South Carolina and you had the internet to go to get to Wikipedia and all of that when you were trying to get yourself autodidactically educated.
When I was a kid, when I was a kid, oh man, would I have loved that.
Wouldn't that have been, and it's growing all the time in its ability to have effect, even into multimedia like we're doing now.
So there is the momentum of science and technology itself, but there is also the need for recognition of that we have to reorganize ourselves to take advantage of that technology, and that's the science that is coming forward. We have to make conscious choices. So it's a matter also of not just letting technology run its course, but it's also a matter of political conscious decision making.
Yes.
In particular, we have to organize. We need to reorganize society along the lines of much greater cooperation, especially in the realm of survival and opportunity
and flourish. Maybe even for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, guys in a jam session, you want everyone to play their instrument as best they possibly can.
Absolutely. We've got We've got probably 50 to 80% of the world's population not able to play their instrument anywhere near where because of the lack of opportunity.
But the opportunity for having everyone able to do that, maybe that would be like a liberated way.
Well,
where everybody's doing their own community-directed sense of participation, and remember, the way they get their identity, their sense of purpose and identity is being undercut because they've had to be almost like serfs on a feudal estate where all the capital assets or the production was owned by a tiny plutocratic class from Nebuchadnezzar to the present.
Well, and it's only getting worse.
Yeah, you think so, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
It's always been bad.
It's always been bad. I would say in early human civilization, it probably wasn't near as bad as it is today. In early civilization, tribal groups were far more. I'm talking about even prior to Egypt.
In the Paleolithic.
Yeah. The tribal groups were much more egalitarian and sharing among themselves.
That's an assumption.
They worked. I think anthropology does.
You do. Well, that would be Ashley Montague wrote well on that. That there was probably cooperation inherent in the survival of the species, taking care of we're so vulnerable for so long as an infant coming out of the, birth canal. But anyway, go ahead.
There is this, anthropology has put forward the various theories about earliest human civilization, where because of the threat, because of the threat of survival that we were facing, we had to cooperate. We had to work together. We couldn't survive if we didn't. And it's been with the growth of technology and knowledge that we were able to, or at least some people were able to, take advantage of that information and see how they could survive better for themselves,
for them and everyone else, everyone else. Yeah.
Well, better for everyone else. That's not what they had in mind, of course.
Probably not.
In the ancient period when slavery was so common, or the Middle Ages when serfdom was so common, and it's not even what they have in mind today.
Right.
But
ought to have that.
Technology can liberate us.
Yeah.
Whereas for a while that technology was and as in a sense still today, it's captured, it's used for the benefit of a few people who have the knowledge of that technology, and so we have to make some real conscious choices about how we want to move forward. Do we want to allow the technology that is available to us all and is a product of the human race? It's a product of a collective effort. It's a product of a cooperative effort. Knowledge is that yes, we compete in the realm of ideas, but it's when we learn and take and gather from others that we grow and we gain our understanding. So education is a incredibly important cooperative project. I'm not saying there's no competition in it. I'm just saying that it's fundamentally through cooperation, you teaching me, or you writing a book and sharing that information, that knowledge with me that I had not thought about and I did not know. That's an incredibly cooperative thing for you to do, is to share your knowledge with others.
And there's a satisfaction that comes from that, isn't there?
Satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, back again to one of the core things from anthropology or sociology, how do people get a sense of their own identity? That's really important.
Well,
the technology is now increasingly able to displace the traditional serf-like labor relationship that people have had, and they would say, well, I'm a person who turns a nut on an assembly line and so forth, but you understand, they got their identity wrapped up in that, or the view of the universe. People were very upset when Galileo said we were not the center of the universe.
Of course, yeah.
So you got to be, the system works in a way. It works now, as we talk now in 2014. It does work. Things run, things get done, sort of like that. But the technology extension of consciousness is, and the robotics are coming exponential upon exponential on top of the information.
Absolutely.
And it's undercutting the means by which people had what they called a job.
Totally.
And their identities wrapped up in it. So we've got to keep that in mind. That's a larger issue and it should be up on the table of our major decision makers.
Yeah, well, it's the
private and public sector.
It's the exponential growth of technology. Technology has helped, and it's helped in a number of ways, and it helped in human beings to have a plow rather than just a stick. It helped to use an ox rather than to use other human beings. I mean, we take tools and we use them, and those tools have improved our lives. And
the higher, if we, go ahead. Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
Those tools have improved our lives. But today, technology is expanding so rapidly, and it is really, as you say, it is putting people out of work.
Well, and that's the way people have a large part. I'm a fireman. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a this. You're messing with their means of having a sense of identity and purpose. Well, and when you do that, that's what I'm saying. It's a large order to think about having a situation of liberated people as opposed to people who've been conditioned to be serfs on a feudal estate where everything productive is owned by a small group of people, which is the history of the world.
Well, that's true. So people's identities are important to them.
Yeah.
And maybe it would be the middle class that has grown up with technology and has because a lot of people on the left and the left forum would say that it'd be the working class is going to really make the changes in the world. You point out, however, the working class has its identities and they feel maybe they feel tied to what they have, and they don't recognize the age in which they're in. In the French Revolution, they tore down the Bastille. They just tore it down. They leveled it. A lot of them with their hands. Coming to that kind of recognition is not an easy thing. It's not a simple thing.
Yeah, and there were some dire circumstances that followed. Tumbrils full of people who were being thrown into prisons and heads chopped off for no good reason. A reign of terror. That can happen when things get out of control, out of revenge.
So, we need to try and keep. Maybe again, what I was trying to drive at was that maybe it's the educated middle class. Now, I consider them part of the working class myself, but it's the educated middle class that would be capable of recognizing the role of technology, how they are themselves being replaced and marginalized by technology. Maybe they are the ones who could imagine another kind of world and not stay stuck with particular identities, and to recognize much greater the universality of humankind, and go beyond the zero society that we're in.
This larger way of thinking.
I don't know. Do we include white collar workers into the working class? I do. I don't. I think the owning class is a very small group of people.
Tiny.
Very small.
Ramsey Clark's one of my heroes, and he and Sarah Flounders, Sarah Flounder, International Action Group. Sarah informed us that the inequity of wealth in the United States of America now, it's absurd.
Oh, it's absurd. Outrageous.
It's a couple of people almost. It's down to a few people who control more wealth than But the inequality in the United States is far greater in percentage terms than it was in 1789 France. So there's a lot of angst and upset with the inability for the system to provide for everybody in a way that perhaps is available, but we don't have the means to realize what we're capable of doing in terms of equity and empathy with the whole system, and that it's a real revolutionary challenge.
It is, and the owning class is not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to change their mind.
Do you think they're able to be?
But let me just say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It will take the unity of the whole working class, which again I include the white collar workers, the technologically trained, and again more advanced, more knowledge, people with more knowledge and understanding of history and the role of revolution in history. They are going to have to unite with the working class, the less educated, so that we can bring everybody along together.
What about do you think it's possible ever to get something that's so comprehensively appropriate to what's needed? We want to get to Zeitgeist, also to Fuller, who informed that largely, Mr. Fresca and so forth. But we get to a point where there's something available to us that just isn't contained within any of the historical institutions, and it could get to a point where we could include everybody, and it might require, you talk about the ownership class, and there's a brief against them by the people who are being ill-served now in a revolutionary way, that you had tumbrils and so forth after the French, but there has to be something by which let's just say, instead of saying we're going to be one happy family, there's class conflict. Between the owners and the people who aren't.
Absolutely.
And if we get to a point where William Shakespeare, Bill Shakespeare, as Judith Malina would call him, or Jimmy Joyce, there's some of the major artists and so forth, he said that they have to be, they have to be hoist on their own petard, which means they would be able to be brought up. They're singing the praises of the ideology or whatever they believe in, and everything is so great that they would have to be shown that if it's so great for us, it can also be great for everybody, rather than just taking a class-based.
You're referring to the owning class?
The owning class, the owning class, the few who own everything, that they would be hoisted on their own petard. And I wonder if on the left, and then you got libertarian right-wing kind of things, Tea Party and other kinds of things, but they might have to also be, that would be a lot of us, and a lot of my friends and everything, we would have to be hoisted on our own petard against certain things that we have a abiding faith in the legitimacy of, and one of them would be the founding idea within the left out of Marx, 1838, of the labor theory of value, that all value is created by labor, and they might be hoisted on their own petard, that's not enough. You have to have some way of having an alternate way of distributing income to people other than their labor, like a serf on a feudal estate, which has been their lot throughout all of history. Both sides have to be hoisted on their own petard to think anew or something. What do you think? Well, maybe we could get it to where we include everybody, including in that sweep, ultimately the ecology, to get us to what Bucky Fuller would have called an operating manual for spaceship Earth, in keeping not only with the present, but with the future that's emerging.
Wow, I'm not sure where you're driving. It seems that you're referring to the different classes as being able to recognize their own failed understanding, or their...
Well, what does it mean to hoist an institution or a way of thought on its own petard? It would be, you're singing the praises of it, and then you realize that that's too narrow a condition. What did Bill Shakespeare say when he said that they hoist on their own petard? It's, you understand what I'm saying? Is that but both sides, not just, it's not the good guys and the bad guys. Everybody would be included in something, that there can be an overriding understanding of what's needed. That'd be like systems thinking writ large, including the ecology, their possibilities to liberate the whole of humanity with an ecological context. And remember still, Harry, those weapon systems, which was the basis of political authority or established political legitimacy, has been throughout all of history, whoever had the biggest club hit the other and established their authority that way, and then had PR to sing the praises of their creation stories and so forth. And that's out of date, the traditional way, in a systems way.
Yeah, well, we have to come together, or we've got an opportunity for paradise and we've got an opportunity for doom.
Thank you.
Okay?
We can liberate or we can annihilate our species and much of the ecology. And that's unique to this generation,
to this moment, and this time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hard to think that could be the case. 200,000 generations.
I'm not too sanguine to think that the owning class is going to just.
Malik, stop the cameras. I thought he was saying that that's something that's already going to be achieved by 10 o'clock this afternoon. No, or something. No, I'm making a joke. The problems are legion and involve practically virtually everything that's being said in the news and everything else. It's a moment of like birth in a birth canal. You're coming to a whole new way of being in evolutionary terms rather than just political.
Well, I would
making
hope,
a joke.
I would hope that the owning class would come around. I'm not too sanguine that they will. But I have hope that the educated working class and the less educated working class, and that they can begin to see and act upon their interests, which is to unite as much as a human race together as we possibly can under a cooperative system where competition exists, but it's not. It's not the basis of the right to life. It's not the race. It's not the basis for the right to opportunity. Right. We have to have equal opportunity, equal right to our lives, and we can
in all its diversity.
Yes. Now we can build a society where there is plenty to go around. Certainly in the basics, plenty to go around. We can put the machines to work. We can let the machines do the work, and rather than having those machines
kill each other,
marginalize us,
they can free us for something more important.
They can free us up, and so the Zeitgeist movement.
Please, let's talk about
the Zeitgeist movement. Adjunct, Peter Joseph, and others are recommending, and I the minute I heard it, I said,
that sounds good to me. Yeah, right.
Finally, somebody's willing to say it. Yeah, and so we need to have a cooperative economy where we let the machines do the work, and we just produce. We do a minimal. Now think about this. We do a minimal amount of work. We let the machines do the work, but the goods and the production that comes out of that is ours. It is ours.
The benefit of that.
The benefit is ours,
rather than to the few of the capital instruments that own all the
It goes to the human race. Yeah. It is again, as I said earlier, education is a collective enterprise.
Real education, not real indoctrination.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yeah. And so we, as a human species, have come to this moment.
Yeah.
And we could, as you say, liberate ourselves.
And the ecology
I have to get
got to be
no price tag. No price tag. It has to be said that the basics. There could be an issue with certain luxury items. We have to work on that maybe, but with most things we could work very few hours. And the things that come out of the production system, we're not charging anybody. No one's charging anybody for anything. You don't need money. You do not need money in order to produce. No. What you need is labor and technology and resources. That's all you need. You don't need money. Yeah. And now the purpose for the money is to keep an accounting of just to keep an accounting of everything, so that people can take more because they think they're more valuable. As you just said, labor theory of value suggests that all work is valuable. If it's not valuable, let's not do it. Okay.
Well,
let's just not do it.
A lot of people do things that aren't intrinsically valuable.
Absolutely.
That's under the paycheck.
They're
like slaves on
That's under the present system. The present system, the present system is one where you do not have a right to your life based on the cooperative nature of the society.
Wow.
You don't have. You either work your butt off or you die,
or you're homeless on the street and people walk over you or they imprison people in prison. 2.5 million people put in prison to warehouse them because somebody could make a profit margin and all the corruption of the system.
So this money system allows for the corruption. I mean, oh my God, the corruption in the world is just unbelievable. I don't know if you heard the latest in the soccer industry.
What's the latest?
The latest in the soccer industry. Soccer is completely. I shouldn't say completely, but it is incredibly infected with fixing of games. It's just absolutely
like they used to do in boxing.
Just recently come out. Yeah, it's it is widespread. It is not a little.
Are you sure that's not just a rumor?
No. A recent book and a discussion was on the.
We're coming up to World Cup now.
So, and I'm sorry I don't have the author's name. His last name is Hill, but I can't remember his first name.
Well, that's a good start.
And you'll be reading we'll all be reading about it because it's going to be coming out more and more. But the corruption is just incredible in our society. Everybody feels like we have to take as much as we possibly can because we know that if we don't have enough, we don't survive. But in hoarding, we hoard through money. That's how money is used for hoarding, or money is hoarded, and this makes everyone's life so difficult because the money is the way you get things, and if it's all hoarded. The top 20% of Americans have 87% of the country's wealth.
I would have thought it's even more.
Well, I know that's a conservative figure.
That's very conservative. If you give it 20%, I don't think it's that high.
But even imagine if that were true. The bottom 80% has 13% of the country's wealth to share. That's maybe it's 10%, but
well, you're
bottom
being
80%
conservative on that. I think there are figures that are much more acute.
Well,
but anyway,
I've seen these figures.
It's becoming absurd and unworkable.
So hoarding. It even undermines its own. Undermines the economy. It undermines itself because when people don't have money, they don't spend.
Right.
So this
they got to. If nothing else, there has to be somebody who can buy the things that can be produced.
Exactly.
The ability, the effective demand to be able to clear the market of what can be produced in a beneficial way. And that's something that you could hoist the capitalists on their own petard with. Okay. Yeah.
So the system cannot function. It is greatly out of balance because of the balance of the wealth that is being created and produced. Half the world's population lives on $2.50 a day.
Unconscionable.
I mean, this is and of course
the trends are not good. I don't think.
Oh, it's getting worse and worse.
The trends are good, Harry. It seems to me the trends are good on the side. No, well, for them that's obvious. It's always been kings lived in castles. Everybody wallowing around in the mud, sort of thing. But it's in the realm, and the distinction has to be made when you're talking about the ability is expanding exponentially to solve the problems at a level of capability. Not the institutions were not formulated to deal with the situation of sufficiency or non-scarcity.
This is
which
why
we may be approaching ontologically or in terms of the reality of the universe, and that's something that has to be not only on the table of intellectuals or something, but certainly there, but also on the table of the major political decision makers. We may be transcending material scarcity at the level of capability. Our institutions
without doing so.
No. It's just it's there. I think it's been there for. There were 50% of the world population. Fuller, who is the basis in many ways of Zeitgeist, which is a major movement, got to he took the thing of haves and have-nots. That we crossed that line of where there were more have-nots at the level of capability, not the reality. The reality is reified institutions dragged from history and so forth, but the capability is growing exponentially, both on the living side, the ability, and on the and it's also there still on the destructive side, the weapons, which is the basis of the political legitimacy, the outdated Adjunct regime of all of human history.
And the fierce competition.
No, it's reached species lethality. They can wipe out every single human being if they make a little mistake arguing about their ideas of the institutions that are outdated rather than adopting the possibility of the ability for everyone to be able to have what they need to exist, and also to have the means by which you want. If you're jamming in a jam session, you want the trumpet to play the best trumpet he can play. You want the violin to play the best. You want the dancing to be the best. Do you know what I mean? People could be encouraged to do the best they possibly can, and
if they're not having to worry about how are they going to survive.
Thank you. So we need to have a new system, and that's again back to Zeitgeist. I mean, that's one movement. There are others, and then the general angst could be. And okay. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm wrangling. We ought to get around to Peter Joseph in that. Maybe.
Well, let me just say that we have two things, two Damocles swords hanging over our heads, and that is nuclear weapons and the competition that leads to that kind of potential.
Well, it's nuclear. Now you got these drones, and you got
a drone may not be able to wipe out the whole human race,
but I'll tell you one thing. Do you remember '62? Were you an adult by then? I was. '62, the Cuban-Kristov crisis. Never so scared in my life. They could have wiped out civilization. There would have been a few straggling human beings.
That was '62, and that happened again in '83. It happened again in '83.
With all due respect, in '62 there would have been the species would have survived.
I know.
After 1970, it is no longer the case that if they unleash the weapons that are on hair trigger alert, I think the Trident submarine fleet could probably do it all by themselves or something, wipe out every single human being on the planet. That's something new and ought to bring people up short in terms of just reifying outdated, unworkable solutions for dealing with the future. Taylor wanted to have an operating manual for Spaceship Earth. We don't have it. We need to have one that takes all these things into account and brings about the possibility of coming into a new relationship in the universe than what we've been for 200,000 years.
That means we learn to cooperate and we stop this fierce competition. But in 1983, an accident happened. Well, there was a Russian
Chernobyl.
Well, no, this was another event where a person at a site where they're watching things. They thought that the United States had launched missiles.
It was geese or something.
Right. It was yes. It was geese. It was something. Yeah. It was and the person in charge was supposed to launch because it looked quite apparent that the United States had launched in '83. This is under Reagan, so you wouldn't be surprised if he would do it.
Right. That was a lurch to the right.
But fortunately, this person, and he's loved by the world, and he wasn't appreciated by the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union, or at least the leaders of the Soviet Union, thought that he should launch if he thinks that something like
patriotic duty, national honor, and everything.
Patriotic duty to do so. But then we have the threat. The other Damocles sword that we have hanging overhead is the environment. Is global warming. And we don't have a lot of time left on that either. We have to get on to solar, wind, geothermal. Now, why don't we do that? The reason why we don't do that is because the coal, oil, and gas companies aren't interested in that. They're interested in selling you coal and oil. If we got onto solar, wind, and geothermal, these things ultimately would be very inexpensive. Even under the present system we have now, would ultimately be very inexpensive. Or they could be inexpensive. They could be free, but even under the system we have now. So they are standing in the way. President Obama just announced a plan to reduce reduce coal emissions, and the coal industry is already, a day or two later, has already got a lawsuit down against
China's
it.
Buried.
You can hardly breathe in various places in China, we have the potential. That would be the key to providing for the future and allowing science to and our ability to produce all kinds of things. And that would be virtual free energy.
Yes.
We have it is.
It's doable.
Very much doable.
It hasn't been, but it is becoming so.
It's because we have a competitive world money. Oh, I can win this game. I can sell oil. I can sell coal to you at a very high price. Makes me rich. Makes me well off. And then you have to pay these horrible prices for this stuff, and then you have to pay the horrible price of the pollution in the atmosphere. But that's
a major issue.
That's because private interest is completely running wild over the interests of the public.
Okay,
and the human race. This is this is the kind of thing that Zeitgeist hopes that especially the educated middle class who are actually benefiting right now from the system. They're okay. They're surviving. They have but they're not paying attention to the threat that they're facing. Their children are facing it very at least. So
it calls for a real change, and they're wanting
major change.
Yeah, and they want to get to. We only got a minute or so left. They They want to get to a resource-based economy, and they want to be able to get to one where there can be cooperation, maybe along the lines of Mondragon in Spain, in the Basque Country. That's an example, and it's a place that we could repair to get a sense of that. Is capture the imagination of a great deal of the young, upcoming intellectual leadership.
We could have democracy. We could have democracy. Real democracy. But we don't. We have such a fake system, a fake democracy. We have an owning class. That owning class owns our political class. And they're merged together to a large extent.
So it's a challenging time to. The Chinese have a thing: spare us from living in interesting times. That's shot to hell now, because it's the most interesting time, hair-raising time. And what some of the things you're dealing with and your colleagues are dealing in the Zeitgeist movement, I take my hat off to them and others. It's beginning to dawn. And we're trying to get that message out here in public access, which is also public access is a thing that could be having a lot of these intellectual ideas put into a multimedia thing. Zeitgeist got going through a multimedia adventure, Zeitgeist addendum and so forth. Multimedia is really important. So thank you for participating. And I thank you very much for such a very, very, very well-led life, young man.
Well, thank you. And
I thank you for viewing.
And I hope that do I have any more time?
You got about 20 seconds. Quick.
I want
use haiku, Harry.
I want people to go to the internet and start looking at the Zeitgeist films.
All right.
And start opening up their minds to the possible.
To the possible that is now there in a way, and it's
there.
The idea is spreading, and that Zeitgeist is going all over the world at that level.
Stay stuck in your tribal ways, and we will lose this planet.
Thank you for viewing. You heard it here's from Harry Cason, and thanks a lot, Harry. It's only the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Welcome to MNM.
Thank you, Harold.
Okay, bye. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Thank you for viewing, and thank you, Harry, for everything.